Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a journey into, well, the heart of some ancient wisdom. We're exploring a selection of texts known as the Minor Upanishads.
That's right. Think of them as these sort of concentrated powerhouses of Hindu philosophical thought. Really fascinating stuff.
And our exploration today, it draws from excerpts of 30 Minor Upanishads, which we got thanks to the Tamil Digital Library.
And we're also bringing in a definition of the Tejobindu Upanishad, specifically from Yogapedia, just to give some extra focus there.
Okay, so our mission really, for you, our learner, is to distill the essential insights from these pretty profound texts.
Yeah, insights into the nature of the self, the universe, and also the practices that can lead to a deeper realization of, well, both.
We're aiming to give you those aha moments, a real understanding without getting maybe bogged down in too much complexity.
Exactly. A shortcut, sort of.
Okay, let's dive right in then. One of the very first big ideas we encounter is this concept of Maya.
Indeed, Maya. The Upanishads introduce it as a kind of fundamental illusion, like a veil, you could say, that conceals the true nature of reality.
Oh, veil. Okay.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here, there's a warning in our sources about how this idea can be twisted.
Twisted how?
Well, how clever but unprincipled persons, as the text puts it, might use it to excuse negative actions. Saying, oh, it's all just Maya, so nothing really matters.
Right. That sounds like a dangerous loophole. If everything's an illusion, then, where do consequences come in?
Exactly the point.
Right.
And the Upanishads are very clear. Realizing the universe is Maya isn't some kind of free pass for bad behavior.
Okay.
It's an understanding that dawns after you've done significant inner work.
Inner work meaning?
Meaning overcoming your deep-seated desires, purifying your inner being, what's sometimes called breaking the heart knot, and crucially, directly experiencing the Atma, your true self within you.
So it's not just a mental trick then. It's a result of real inner transformation. Understanding a magic trick only after you've seen how the illusion is actually created.
That's a wonderful analogy.
Yeah.
Perfect. Because until you have that direct inner experience, just, talking about God everywhere remains just words.
Right. An intellectual idea, not a lived reality.
Precisely. Which naturally leads us to think about how these profound ideas were traditionally learned in the first place.
Which I imagine was quite different from how we learn today, just reading a book or, listening to something like this.
Oh, a very different paradigm, yes. The rishis, the ancient wisdom teachers, they didn't present knowledge all neatly packaged up and, pre-digested.
No. How did they do it then?
They revealed it gradually, bit by bit almost. And the fascinating thing about this method, its purpose, was to actively engage the disciples' intellectual and, more importantly, their spiritual faculties. It wasn't about passively just soaking up information.
So much more participatory, interactive learning.
Exactly. Our text actually contrasts this with a lot of modern knowledge delivery, where the emphasis is often on making information well assimilated, easy to consume.
Which is efficient, I suppose, but maybe less deep.
Well, it might not stimulate our deeper reasoning and spiritual understanding in the same way. In the ancient system, when a disciple really struggled with a question, grappled with it, and then received guidance.
The understanding would be much deeper.
Much deeper, exactly. More profound. It was like an inner awakening because they'd put in the work.
Because they had to work through it themselves first. It wasn't just handed to them on a plate.
Precisely. And the teacher's role, it went far beyond just explaining concepts. It was about facilitating a direct experience of the truth.
Okay.
The example given is understanding the soul. The guru aimed to guide the disciple to realize the soul, not just intellectually grasp definitions and theories about it.
This emphasis on direct inner experience, it seems connected to the focus on specific inner bodily centers in the Upanishads, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes. The Upanishads highlight certain energy centers within the body as key focal points for, spiritual growth.
Like chakras or something similar.
Similar concepts, yes. And what's interesting to note is a slight difference in emphasis depending on the text. The major and Vedanta Upanishads, they tend to focus primarily on the heart center.
Okay, the heart.
Whereas the Yoga Upanishads, they cover a broader range, including centers in the head, the heart, the navel area. It's like different maps highlighting slightly different landmarks, but on the same basic terrain.
So different traditions within the Upanishads might have slightly different inner geographies they focus on.
You could put it that way, yeah. Our text also introduces this concept of the heart knot, or Hudaya Granthi.
The heart knot, what's that?
Think of it as the core knot of your being, where your ego and those deep-seated emotions reside. It's identified with the linga, the subtle
That
body.
subtle body. Okay.
And consciousness itself, Chaitanya, when it's reflected within this heart knot, it's described in two ways. One is chitrajna, the knower of the field, the one aware of all your experiences,
Right.
and the other is sakshi, the silent witness.
The observer within. That's a concept you hear in, well, many contemplative traditions, isn't it?
It is indeed very widespread.
Okay, so let's step back a bit and look at the bigger picture. What do these texts actually say about the fundamental nature of reality itself and, our place in it?
Well, the core teaching, fundamentally, is that your true essence, what you really are, is the soul.
The Atma.
The soul. Atma. Got it.
Then there's Brahman. Brahman is described as the non-dual one, the ultimate reality that underlies absolutely everything.
The ultimate source.
Yes. It's characterized by Jnana.
Right.
You can think of that as pure, radiant wisdom. It's all-pervading, and it doesn't have the limitations we associate with physical things like birth or death or other attributes. It just is.
So Atma is like our individual spark of that divine, and Brahman is the whole all-encompassing divine fire, so to speak.
Yeah.
A good way to think about it.
But then how do we reconcile that with our everyday feeling of being, a separate individual,
Wow.
walking around, doing things?
That's where the idea of jiva comes in. The jiva is described as the deluded one, the atyasi.
Deluded.
Deluded in the sense that it mistakenly identifies with the physical body, the mind, and then experiences the consequences of karma because of that identification.
Right, that feeling of being me, separate from everything else.
Exactly. But the Upanishads also reveal that this very Brahman, this ultimate reality, it manifests in countless forms,
How so?
as all the various deities, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, who is called Rudra here sometimes, and also Indra, the sun, the moon, the devas, the asuras, humans, animals, everything.
Wow.
Think of it like the ocean manifesting as countless different waves. Each wave looks distinct, but it's all just ocean.
One source expressing itself in an infinite variety of ways.
Okay.
So if we're kind of stuck in the state of perceived separation, this jiva state, what's the way out? How do we achieve liberation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Bondage and liberation, or moksha? The Upanishads explain that a mind that's really strongly attached to vasana.
Vasana. What are vasanas exactly?
Think of them as deep-seated desires, latent impressions, tendencies from past experiences. They're the things that drive our actions and reactions, often unconsciously.
Okay, those ingrained patterns.
Yes. And a mind full of these, especially the impure ones, leads to this feeling of bondage, of limitation. Conversely, freedom from these vasanas is what emancipation, moksha, is all about.
So it's about freeing the mind from those chains.
Precisely. And it's important the texts distinguish between pure and impure vasanas. And they state that true jnana, true wisdom, doesn't just arise from chasing worldly desires, or interestingly, from simply reading scriptures, or just through the physical body itself.
So you can't just read your way to enlightenment or think your way there.
Not according to this, no. It's about going beyond those ingrained desires that pull us around.
Okay, so what is the path then? How do you achieve that freedom?
Well, the path to liberation, according to these texts, involves several things working together. Cultivating devotion is one. Learning to control the senses is another, not suppressing them harshly, but guiding them inward, away from constant external seeking.
Mastering the senses.
And ultimately realizing the Atma, that true self, as being present in everything, as all full.
Seeing the divine spark everywhere.
Exactly. They also mention different types or maybe stages of salvation. Salokya, which is dwelling in the same realm as the divine. Sarupya, having a similar form. And Samipya, being in close proximity.
Different ways of relating to the ultimate, perhaps.
Perhaps. And interestingly, the concept of upavasa, which most people know as fasting, is reinterpreted here.
Oh, how so?
It's presented not just as abstaining from food, but as the union of jivatma, the individual soul, and paramatma, the supreme soul. It means dwelling near in a spiritual sense.
That's a really insightful reinterpretation. Dwelling near the divine within.
Exactly. It highlights the inner spiritual connection.
And it sounds like this journey, this path, isn't really meant to be undertaken completely alone. What about the role of a guru, a spiritual teacher?
Oh, absolutely crucial. The Upanishads place great emphasis on the importance of finding a virtuous guru, a spiritual teacher who really embodies positive qualities, who lives the wisdom.
Someone who walks the talk.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the traditional way of learning involved studying very closely with such a guru, offering service, and respectfully seeking knowledge and guidance. It was a deep relationship.
Right. And alongside this guidance from a guru,
Dedicated practices are essential. Things like meditation, dhyana, self-inquiry is very important, often expressed through the mantra Soham or Aham Brahmasmi, meaning essentially I am he or I am that ultimate reality.
that constant reminder of your true nature.
Yes, and learning to master the senses, as we mentioned.
So it seems like a knowledgeable guide and consistent, dedicated practice are really the twin pillars supporting this path.
You could absolutely say that. Practices like pranayama, breath control, are also introduced as vital tools.
Pranayama, right. Why is that so important?
It's seen as a way to purify the nadis, the subtle energy channels within the body, and also for awakening kundalini.
Kundalini, that latent spiritual energy we hear about.
Exactly. The energy believed to lie dormant at the base of the spine. Pranayama helps awaken and guide it. And the sacred syllable omkara, or om, is also given huge significance.
Oh.
Yes, with its various aspects, the matras, the syllabic components, and kalas, the time durations or subtle energies being key elements in deep meditative practices. Focusing on Om is a path in itself.
No, our source materials specifically mention the Tejobindu Upanishad. What are some of the unique insights it offers? It sounds quite focused.
It is. The Yogapedia definition, which aligns well with our excerpts, tells us that Tejobindu Upanishad is particularly focused on the direct realization of the Atma.
Direct experience again.
Yes. It features these incredibly powerful declarations like, I am of the nature of Parabrahman, stating directly the experience of supreme bliss and divine wisdom.
Wow, that's quite a statement.
It is. And in this realized state, the text says, dualities and worldly concerns are transcended. There's no longer a perception of heat and cold as separate, or thirst and hunger, or even friend and foe in the same way.
It's a state of profound oneness, then, beyond opposites.
That's the description, a state of unity beyond our ordinary dualistic way of thinking and perceiving.
Okay. Anything else specific to Tejobindu?
Yes, it also emphasizes the importance of vrittijnana.
Vrittijnana.
It means knowledge of the modifications of consciousness, basically. Understanding how your own thoughts, feelings, and perceptions arise and change. Observing the mind.
Mindfulness, almost.
Very related, yes.
Eh,
And it also highlights meditation utilizing transcendental energy. A key practice described involves systematically reducing the visible, tangible world down to its invisible, underlying essence.
How does one do that?
Through focused contemplation and meditation, ultimately perceiving everything as Brahman, as that one ultimate reality, seeing the source in all manifestations.
That sounds like a very profound and truly transformative way of seeing the world.
It certainly implies a radical shift in perception.
Our texts also touch upon some perhaps less frequently discussed aspects of existence, don't they?
They do. One particularly evocative idea is the description of the jiva's journey within the womb.
In the womb.
Yes, detailing the formation of the physical body month by month. But what really stands out is the notion that even within that confined space, the individual soul, the jiva, is contemplating its past miseries and experiencing this deep yearning for release, for liberation.
That's incredible. A pre-birth awareness of the cycle of suffering and already wanting out.
That's the picture painted. A powerful image, isn't it? A consciousness already reflecting on the human condition before it's even fully, entered the world stage.
Definitely a powerful image.
And another fascinating point is the Upanishadic definition of what constitutes a true Brahmana.
Brahmana, referring to the priestly caste traditionally.
Traditionally, yes, but here the texts shift the focus. Rather than emphasizing solely birth or adherence to rituals, the real emphasis is placed on inner qualities.
Like what?
Like freedom from negative emotions, malice, envy, freedom from desires, from delusion, from pride, from egoism. It's about inner character and genuine spiritual development, not just your social standing or what rituals you perform.
So, true spiritual status is something earned through inner transformation. It's not just inherited by birth.
That's precisely the message.
Yeah.
Very meritocratic in a spiritual sense.
Interesting. And similarly, there's a reinterpretation of Kurukshetra, the famous battlefield from the Gita.
Yes. Kurukshetra, which is a very significant holy place in Hindu tradition, is reinterpreted here as the inner self.
The inner self is the battlefield.
Or rather, the holy field. The place for an internal sacrifice, the sacrifice of the ego, the lower self. It's the true location for profound spiritual work and awakening. The real pilgrimage site is within.
Okay, that brings a whole new dimension to it.
And we also find a very clear pantheistic perspective expressed in some parts.
Pantheistic, meaning God is everything.
Essentially, yes. Stating that the entire universe is, in its essence, nothing but God, often named here as Narayana.
God as the fundamental substance of all that exists, not separate from it.
Exactly. Woven into the fabric of reality.
Now, the texts also mention obstacles, don't they? Things that get in the way of this realization.
They do. They identify 10 specific obstacles that can hinder one's progress in attaining the truth of yoga.
10 obstacles. What are they?
Let's see. There's doubt, carelessness, laziness, excessive sleep, clinging to worldly objects or sense pleasures, having erroneous perceptions or wrong views.
Just like a practical list.
Very much so. Also, being overly attracted to sensual objects, a fundamental want of faith in the path or the teaching, and ultimately the failure to actually attain the truth or stabilize in it.
So things like mental distractions, lack of discipline, maybe misunderstandings.
Exactly. You can broadly group them into those categories. It's interesting how timeless those obstacles seem, isn't it?
Absolutely. Those are challenges people still face today in pretty much any kind of self-improvement or spiritual path, really.
They really are universal human tendencies. And finally, there's a really thought-provoking idea presented about the illusion of rebirth.
The illusion of rebirth, how so?
Well, it poses a question, almost a challenge. If the body we experience in the waking state is ultimately just as unreal, just as much a temporary manifestation as the body we inhabit in a dream,
Okay.
then what is the actual basis for rebirth? What is it that's supposedly being reborn if the vehicle itself is fundamentally illusory? It really pushes you to question your assumptions about identity and reality.
Wow, that really does make you think differently about the nature of identity and, well, what persists beyond the physical form, if anything.
It's a deep philosophical probe.
So to try and bring all these rich, sometimes complex ideas together, what would you say are the key takeaways for our listener, for our learner from this deep dive?
Well, I think we've explored the really profound concept of reality as potentially Maya, but understanding that its true realization isn't an intellectual game. It requires deep inner purification, right?
Yeah.
And the realization of your true self, the Atma, Jnana.
That inner work we talked about.
Exactly. And the guidance of a wise guru, plus dedicated, consistent spiritual practices, meditation, self-inquiry, controlling the senses they're presented as absolutely essential on this path.
A path leading towards.
Towards transcending the dualities, the pairs of opposites that tend to define our ordinary everyday experience, finding that underlying unity.
And the really crucial thing to remember, it seems, is that true knowledge, according to these ancient texts, isn't just about intellectual understanding or, memorizing philosophical points.
No, absolutely not. It demands that inner work, personal experience, and ultimately a fundamental shift in how you perceive yourself and the world around you.
Yeah.
It's experiential.
Right. So perhaps here's a final question for you, the listener, to contemplate. How might understanding these ancient concepts about the self, about Maya, about the underlying nature of reality, how might that actually shift your own perspective on your daily experiences, your challenges, the people you interact with, and the world you inhabit?
That's a great question to ponder.
It definitely gives you food for thought. We really encourage you, if this has sparked your interest, to explore these fascinating Upanishads further.